Let's talk about, from a security perspective, about Mac versus PC. And I'll tell you right now, I've actually never used a Mac before. Well, I did use a Mac before back in like 2015-ish. And I used it because my friend bought it. But I was also always like a Windows guy. And so, yeah. But from a security perspective, and I know Windows is getting a lot of flack for online data collection, since Windows 10 days. They've been collecting so much data. So another security tip, if you are using Windows, we might actually be making a video on how you can prevent a lot of the data collection, which is, I think, would be very useful to people, because you'd be surprised how much stuff Windows wants to know about you. They even have like this one of the parameters, actually like media activity, where they will actually monitor what like movies or videos you watch. And they will send those to, I believe, the Windows cloud, whatever, and they will try to, they mostly use it for ads.
They say it's for recommendations and sometimes subtitles and things like that.
But do you know
they are collecting what you're doing, and they know where it's from and who you bought it from, if you bought it. So it's stuff you may or may not want to be transmitting to Microsoft.
And it's something that I think Apple doesn't do. Like, I've never had a pop-up on on my Mac saying like, oh, would you like us to collect this data? And I'm sure Apple, they're not innocent either. They also have like some kind of collection, privacy going on.
Yeah, I mean, Apple are more privacy-minded because it's their business differentiator right now.
And honestly, I believe that manufacturers and these companies should consider this aspect. And some of them do. Even Windows, they will say, we care about your privacy. But the way Apple does it, I think they make it a feature. Instead of making it a bothering thing, like, oh, like these pop-ups and things like that. Instead, they say, we care about this. And they install these little features, like, little lights on this MacBook. They will turn green when things are going on. So, yeah.
I mean, it's compelling. I do trust to a degree things that Apple are doing. Sometimes they do it by locking down hardware, so it's actually more closed.
Yeah.
Like, it's a real struggle if you want to dual boot, install Linux on there, get Ubuntu running. But if you can work within that walled garden, it's by default probably more secure. One of the disappointing things about Windows is they still have this two-tiered system where if you use the Home Edition, you don't get the encryption on the drive, which I think is such an own goal. It's fail. Why are you doing this? The people who need it most are the people who perhaps can't afford or don't want to get the Pro and Enterprise editions. Like, what are they thinking with this?
For the longest time, if you wanted to get that encryption, you needed to have the Pro. And this was true, I think, since Windows XP or something. So, and even, I think on Windows 7, you had to use Ultimate.
Yeah. Did they improve that now with 11?
Actually, I believe no. You still have to, if you want to get, I forgot what it's called actually, but it has a name. BitLocker, that's right. So if you want to use BitLocker, I believe you still need Windows 11 Pro. So it's one of the ways that they push you to upgrade if you don't have Pro. But yeah.
My recommendation would definitely improve a notch if they just simply ship that. Would they lose business? Probably not. They'd probably just be helping people not get involved in so many ransomware situations.
Oh, yes.
They got to change that policy.
So, yeah. But if you want to stay extremely, secure, Linux is the way to go, probably.
Yeah. But why, I think, is an interesting thing. Now, sure, it's about the engineering and the quality of the OS. But I think it's also partly because of the kinds of ways that people use their Windows. Okay, people are going to be playing more games.
Oh, yeah.
They may be pirating some software in cases which can be a risk because there's a higher chance that there is a virus or a Trojan in that download if it's not actually purchased from the vendor. Whereas that kind of practice isn't so common on Mac or Linux. So yes, it's about the inherent security of the OS, but it's also about the ways that people use those operating systems.
Yeah, and people will use whatever they're used to, right? So if I'm used to Windows and I'm used to gaming on it, whatever, you move to Linux, you lose a lot of the games because there's a website I think called ProtonDB, and you will notice a bunch of games are not accessible on Linux, and most of it is because of the anti-cheat systems which use the kernel. So I think not all of them are optimized for it. That's why they're not there. But also the user base is so small.
Yeah, you know,
So-
I've been a developer for many years on the Linux desktop.
Okay.
So I worked on the GNOME desktop,
Okay.
trying to make that user interface really the world's best desktop operating system, and making it available for free so that it could be used in communities around the world. And I don't think we managed in the end to get that out there on every desktop, but in a way it didn't matter because the web became the open platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will try to use Linux more. I do want to try it out. But maybe we'll make it a series or something like I try Linux and see how it goes. Actually, Linus Tech Tips, which is a very popular channel, we watch them a lot here. They made where they switched to Linux and they were having a lot of issues.
I heard it didn't work.
It
I
didn't
saw
work.
some of the fallout.
Yeah, because they were facing a lot of sound issues. Proprietary software. Because a lot of these, even like this microphone and things like that, like certain devices just work because there's drivers for it, and again, as much as it pains to say, but Linux user base is extremely small. But actually, on that note, here at Surfshark, we did develop the GUI app for Linux, which was a big request from us, and people are extremely happy. I think in the Linux community, they are very appreciative when you provide them something, and I think that was the case when NVIDIA. For the longest time, they didn't want to provide drivers and code for Linux, but eventually they did, and I think the relationship has been getting better now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a myth that all Linux users use the command line. It's nice to put out some desktop utilities and options at least. It's also good to have the option to do it yourself manually. That's one thing I like about the Surfshark instructions is there's that manual setup guide. So many organizations, they'll miss that and they just say install this exe file and just be done with it. But maybe you want to wire your VPN your own way. Maybe you want to set up your own routing rules. Maybe you want bits of your LAM to be accessible. Maybe you want your local country networks to be available locally. You can set up all these custom routes if you set up your own VPN. So that's pretty cool to have those instructions.